Good morning and welcome to this Wednesday edition of FreightWaves Now on day 2 of FreightWaves Live at Home. I'm your host Anthony Smith, and coming up, Luke Velasco is going to give us a broker update. But first, we're going to go to Zach Strickland with a carrier update brought to you by Powerfleet. Stay tuned.
Hello and welcome to this Wednesday Carrier Update presented by Powerfleet. I'm Zach Strickland, and today we're continuing to watch nothing else but those volumes. Those volumes are moving sideways right now. Our outbound tender volume index continues to go slightly, 0.07% up, which is pretty much flat, again for the second day in a row. Not seeing a lot of movement on those volumes. For those of you attending our virtual event right now, we just heard Derek Leathers talk about how he expects a soft May. So far, that looks to be the case. So, we're not seeing a lot of movement, not a lot of volatility on the volumes just yet. It is still early, however. So, let's break it down. Let's break it down into certain, trailer types. So we've got the van outbound tender volume index and the reefer outbound tender volume index right here. So there is a divergence between reefer volumes and van volumes. Van volumes continue to press a little sideways after having a nice little bump there at the end of the month. They have decided to go flat, which is driving a lot of what we're seeing in that outbound tender volume index. Roughly 70% of that index is van volumes. The reefer outbound tender volume index, however, continuing to climb as we enter through May. So reefer starting to show up right now. So what does that do to capacity as I back up here? So van outbound tender rejection index, 2.51%. Still declining very slowly, not necessarily having a lot of movement here, but it is not showing any signs of life just yet. We're still waiting for that heartbeat. Reefer outbound tender rejection index here in the orange, however, is starting to pick up. So a lot of these volumes are actually pulling some of those rejection rates a little bit higher going into May. Again, this is the time of year we would expect reefer rejection rates to start to climb. We're getting those warmer time, the warmer months, produce seasons start to kick off in Florida and California, etc. So again, reefer rejection rates starting to climb up, still very historically low. We're not seeing anything dramatic here. Normally tender rejection rates for reefer operate right around 8%, 8 to 9% in the slow time. So we're still well below that, but it is a decent sign to see that capacity is starting to tighten in at least one of the modes, in the country right now. Breaking this down, I'm gonna back up here and show this is a list of all the markets right now from top to bottom that are having the biggest change in reefer tender rejection. So Sioux Falls, South Dakota, not a huge reefer market, but we kind of break it down here. If we're looking over here at the market share, this is going to show you the biggest markets in the country. So you can kind of scale through here, you can slide through here and look to see what are the biggest markets right now showing the biggest changes in reefer tender rejection rates. And looking through here, I'm going to scroll down. Little Rock, Arkansas, pretty decent market, 0.505% market share, decent sized market. But I'm going to look further down and look about Allentown, Pennsylvania, one of the largest markets in the United States, showing a pretty big tender rejection rate increase for reefer. So I've pulled out a few of those here on the spaghetti chart, or the sketty chart as my kids like to call it, over here on the side. And you can see some of these markets. Ontario going up, Allentown, as I just mentioned, Nashville and Lakeland, all showing significant increases at that of reefer outbound tender rejection rates. So Nashville's sitting over there at 12%. I'm watching Ontario over there. It's still down pretty low, around 4.07%. So again, we might be seeing the early signs of this produce season, or potentially just increased volatility in the reefer market. And that'll do it for today's Carrier Update.
The comprehensive logistics offerings from Powerfleet cover in-cab ELD, fleet management, trailer tracking, cargo monitoring, and tracking other assets such as chassis and intermodal containers. Power up your operations with Powerfleet.
Hi everybody, I'm Luke bringing you the broker update. So what we've got going on here, we're looking at the volume levels in the United States. They're being flat over the last couple of days. Look at the blue line here. We have bounced up quite a bit though since that bottom that we hit about 2 weeks ago. So that's the good news. So it looks like we're just hanging out, a very slight uptick day over day, but nothing significant. The orange line on the other hand is just tender rejections. Again, very small uptick day over day, nothing to get excited about, but the good news is it's not sliding any further. This next chart that we'll look at here is the reefer market, which is going to tell us, come on, there we go. All right, here we go. So in blue, you've got reefer volume levels. Again, produce season is here, so it's starting to increase a little bit. Notice that blue line, it's starting to inch back up, which is really good. We're actually a little bit higher than where we were kind of at the start of this coronavirus surge in volume, so that's a good sign. Now, the orange line there that you're gonna wanna look on, that is 2019 reefer volume levels. So we're actually sitting roughly 20% above where we were this time last year. Really good sign. So the reefer market's done very well. If you're moving freight in that market, expect to continue to have increases in volume. Of course, that will vary depending on where you are around the country, but should be some good increases. So we'll keep an eye on that. What we're going to look at next here is our call map. So this is where volume levels are increasing the most. Remember, no market is created equal. Different areas of the country react a little bit differently. So while volume levels have been flat over the last couple of days, that's not going to be the case everywhere. So this map right here, the markets in blue are where volume levels have increased over the past 7 days. Markets in red are where volume levels are decreasing. And then the white markets are relatively unchanged. So notice there's a lot of blue right here. Kind of once you start to get west of Texas, you have Phoenix is going up a lot, Salt Lake City, a lot going on here on the western side of the United States. And then also kind of here in the middle, a lot of these border towns, it looks like Houston's picking up as well, San Antonio, especially as you get kind of around to some of these northern parts, Minneapolis picking up a lot. So there's a lot of areas here. If you're looking to move some freight, if you can find some areas to call in between watching FreightWaves live, I'd go ahead and focus on some of those areas there. You might find some increased opportunity from shippers in those markets. Capacity may even tighten up as well. So great areas to focus on for call volume. The red markets, wouldn't expect too much return today, so I'd probably focus, wouldn't spend too much time looking at those. Now we're going to go ahead. This is a brand new Sonar 6.0 update here, so I thought we'd take a look at the LA to Chicago lane. Keep in mind this is going to be for dry van only right now. So what we've got here, you have your Sonar signals, right? So the origin market of 39, that's going to give a little bit of pricing power over to the shipper. Destination market, pricing power is still in favor of the shipper, but not quite as significant. It looks like it's going a little bit more towards a balanced market. So as a broker, you should be able to use that to your favor, knowing that you're taking a carrier out of a market, sending them to a market that's going to have a little bit more favor for them to find a better paying load. And it looks like, just looking at today's rate, we're at $1.21 a mile. Keep in mind that's line haul, that's without fuel, so you will need to add your fuel surcharge in to get your all-in rate. But notice down here on the bottom, we're sitting right here. If you can see that line there, that line's actually expected to increase. So you would expect rates on this lane to increase.
Voices from every corner of the supply chain concerning all modes of transportation. From the world's largest logistics podcast network, this is what the Freight Tech Revolution sounds like. Freightcast presented by FreightWaves. Subscribe now wherever you get your podcasts.
And that's going to do it for this edition of FreightWaves Now. I'm your host, Anthony Smith, but stay tuned because we're going to go to demo shortly. Thanks so much for tuning in, and stay active in those Slack channels.